Okay, so Diddy's trial starts in only a couple of weeks, and we thought we had discovered everything there was to know about him and his wild escapades. You're about to be hit with a plot twist. According to Diddy's former assistant Phil Pines, the stuff we've already heard is just the surface, and the truth runs way deeper than anyone could have imagined. Phil revealed that Diddy used to make him set up these notorious freak-off parties, and this wasn't just some casual task, it was a whole operation. According to Phil, he wasn't just arranging the parties, he was also allegedly responsible for securing all kinds of illegal substances, the kind of stuff you definitely don't want to get caught with. The stories he shared painted a picture of a much darker, more disturbing side to Diddy's lifestyle than anyone knew. And before you start thinking Phil is just talking out of his neck, don't worry, he came with receipts. We're talking voice notes, text messages, and all sorts of shady documentation. Not only that, but he's also claiming that Diddy allegedly tried to pimp him out to his friends as well. It's looking like Phil might hold the key to finally exposing Diddy for all his mess, so let's break this whole situation down and see what's really going on. Okay, so reports have it that Phil worked as Diddy's assistant from 2019 to 2021, and let me just say, the things he allegedly witnessed during that time were nothing short of jaw-dropping. I'm not talking about minor stuff. Phil claims he saw things that made even the wildest rumors look tame. To no one's surprise, he said that Diddy often had him organize these infamous freak-offs, though Diddy was quick to rebrand them as Wild King's Nights. Chile, I've got to hand it to Diddy. He definitely has a knack for giving his crazy gatherings names that almost make them sound royal or mythical. And once you hear what goes down at these Wild King's Nights, it becomes pretty clear why they needed so much preparation. Phil explained that these parties didn't just pop up overnight, they were the result of intense planning. We're talking about making sure every detail was squared away before the event and, as you can imagine, taking care of the mess afterward. These weren't the kind of parties you just leave to clean up themselves. No, the aftermath required major attention to detail, everything from security to clearing up evidence of what went down to managing the chaos left behind. It was a whole operation. According to the federal indictment documents that were released after Diddy's arrest, it turns out that the freak-offs, or Wild King's Nights, were no random spontaneous events. Oh no, these were well-thought-out affairs that needed some serious planning. The feds detailed in the documents just how elaborate these parties were, with the level of preparation going far beyond what we'd expect from a typical, chaotic event. Apparently, everything had to be carefully coordinated, from who would be invited to the kind of atmosphere they wanted to create, and of course all the logistics surrounding the illegal activities that were allegedly part of the events. The amount of detail that went into making sure these nights went off without a hitch was impressive, if not entirely disturbing. It's clear that these gatherings weren't something that happened on a whim. They were high-stakes, high-maintenance productions that required precision and, most importantly, secrecy. The court documents said, in arranging these freak-offs, Combs, with the assistance of members and associates of the Combs enterprise, transported and caused to be transported commercial workers across state lines and internationally. Freak-offs occurred regularly, sometimes lasted multiple days, and often involved multiple commercial workers. During freak-offs, Combs distributed a variety of controlled substances to victims, in part to keep the victims obedient and compliant. Sometimes unbeknownst to the victims, Combs kept videos he filmed of victims engaging in acts with commercial workers. After freak-offs, Combs and the victims typically received IV fluids to recover from the physical exertion and substance use. When Cassie sued Diddy, she didn't hold back, and she went into extensive detail about what really went down at those freak-offs. Reading through her lawsuit, it was clear she was painting a nightmare scenario, one that sounded more like something out of a horror story than a glamorous life in the music industry. Cassie didn't just hint at what happened, she laid it all out, describing the debauchery in vivid detail. In the lawsuit, Cassie wrote about the atmosphere of control and manipulation that seemed to permeate these events, emphasizing just how toxic and the whole situation had become for her. Cassie wrote, "The first time, Mr. Combs hired a man and brought the man to his home in Los Angeles. The man, Mr. Combs, and Ms. Ventura wore masquerade masks and ingested drugs. Mr. Combs directed Ms. Ventura to perform intimate acts with this man while Mr. Combs watched them. The entire encounter lasted multiple days. Mr. Combs began to call the arrangement a freak-off, or FO. Cassie also revealed that not only did Diddy allegedly use substances, but he also forced her to use the substances as well. She wrote, Mr. Combs always supplied Ms. Ventura with copious amounts of drugs before and during the FOs. Ms. Ventura was given C, B, marijuana and alcohol in excessive amounts during FOs, which allowed her to disassociate during these horrific encounters. It became commonplace to get IV fluids in the days after an FO to recover from the excessive substances pushed upon her. At the time, Diddy denied the claims and put Cassie on blast for blackmail, with his lawyers saying he vehemently denies these offensive and outrageous allegations. Ms. Ventura's demand of $30 million, under the threat of writing a damaging book about their relationship, was unequivocally rejected as blatant blackmail. Despite withdrawing her initial threat, Ms. Ventura has now resorted to filing a lawsuit riddled with baseless and outrageous lies, aiming to tarnish Mr. Combs' reputation and seeking a payday. However, Diddy didn't waste any time settling the lawsuit. He wrapped it up within a day, and for a lot of people, that was all the confirmation they needed to believe that Cassie might have been telling the truth. The quick settlement raised a lot of eyebrows, with many speculating that Diddy didn't want to risk airing out more details or getting dragged through further public scrutiny. Now, some fans have believed that Diddy had maybe chilled out over the years and that the Freakoff situation was just a toxic chapter he inflicted on Cassie because of personal animosity or whatever beef they had. But after hearing the stories that Phil has been telling, it seems like that theory might be off base. If anything, Diddy allegedly kept up with his bad behavior after Cassie, and from the sounds of it, it might have even gotten worse. And that's saying a lot considering the horrific things Cassie described in her lawsuit. The idea that things could have taken an even darker turn is honestly mind-blowing, but given the depth of Phil's claims, it's starting to feel like there's way more to the story than anyone realized. Cassie finally escaped from Diddy in 2018, but Phil didn't start working with Diddy until 2019. And according to his own account, it looks like Cassie wasn't Diddy's only alleged victim. Phil worked alongside Diddy until 2021, and during that time, he saw firsthand just how frequent the so-called Wild King nights really were. According to him, these parties allegedly happened way more often than anyone might have thought. Phil, who also filed his own lawsuit against Diddy, made it clear that these events were not just one-off moments of madness. They were a regular part of Diddy's life, something he actively orchestrated and relied on his staff to help facilitate. It turns out that these kinds of events weren't outliers, but part of an ongoing, deeply troubling pattern of behavior. Phil said, "Look, there's partying, and then there's partying." There were guests that would frequently come over and participate in these intimate situations. Sometimes you would see new faces, sometimes you'd see new faces come in and you wouldn't see them again. Phil also claimed that some of the women who showed up to these parties were so rattled by what they saw that he had to physically guide them out because they were visibly shaken by the scene. He gave an example of one particular incident where a woman was so disturbed by what transpired at the party that she was almost in a state of disbelief, and he had to step in and escort her out of the situation. He said, "I remember a time when Diddy told me to come up and grab one of his guests' bags, take her down to the car, and drive her to her hotel. I don't know what took place. All I can say is that when I brought her down to the car, she was shaking. Physically shaking. She didn't look like how she looked the night before. She said something to the effect of, 'I've never done anything like this before.' But that's not all." Phil went on to claim that Diddy allegedly got physical with the women and not in any positive way. He said that Diddy's behavior wasn't just about throwing these chaotic parties, it extended to moments where he allegedly crossed lines and became aggressive toward the women involved. According to Phil, Diddy's actions were reportedly far from respectful, and he described instances where the women were not only uncomfortable but physically intimidated by him. He said, "I absolutely witnessed violence. Things were getting a little heated. They were being very argumentative. He cursed at her. I told you I was crazy. Kicked her. She fell to the ground, kicked her again." Yeah, given what we know about Diddy, this isn't exactly shocking. Phil also claimed that Diddy would make him purchase a long list of illegal substances for the parties, just like he allegedly forced Cassie to do during their time together. According to Phil, this wasn't a one-time occurrence. It was a regular part of his duties. He described how Diddy would have him procure everything from drugs to other illicit items to ensure the Wild King nights went off as planned. What's even more disturbing is that, according to Phil, the majority of the people at these parties were young women.
We usually had a laundry list of items that included lights, alcohol, marijuana. Those requests started to become more frequent. A lot of times you would have him with a younger female, and there's a power dynamic there. A more impressionable girl is easier to reel in. Consent is between the people that are engaging, and I wasn't there in these situations to understand the consent.
And to make it clear that he wasn't just talking for attention, Phil came prepared with receipts. He didn't just make claims, he backed them up with evidence, sharing voice notes where Diddy was allegedly heard ordering him to get various substances for the parties. These voice notes seemed to confirm what Phil had been saying all along, adding credibility to his accusations. It wasn't just hearsay anymore. Phil had the audio proof to show that Diddy had directly instructed him to procure illegal items, which only deepened the disturbing picture he was painting of Diddy's behavior behind the scenes.
Phil, I need some Cialis and give me 20 Xanax, please. Hey, Phil, I need a plan B.
I remember hearing the words, prove your loyalty to me, King. He grabbed me by the shoulders, pushed me to a girl that was on the couch.
It kind of sounds like Diddy might have tried to force Phil into participating in the Wild King Nights, which honestly wouldn't be that surprising, especially when you consider what Lil Rod said in his own lawsuit. Lil Rod claimed that Diddy allegedly touched him inappropriately against his will, and when he confronted Diddy about it, Diddy reportedly brushed it off as nothing more than horseplay. In Lil Rod's lawsuit, he detailed some serious and disturbing allegations about Diddy's behavior, claiming that Diddy would get handsy, touching him inappropriately, and even grabbing his behind on multiple occasions. What's even more unsettling is that he claimed Diddy would walk around completely nude, acting as though it was perfectly normal, casually swinging that thing around like nobody's business. Rodney felt like Diddy wasn't just being inappropriate for no reason. He believed Diddy was trying to lure him into some kind of affair or intimate encounter, something that made him uncomfortable and ultimately disgusted by the whole situation. But the allegations didn't stop there. Rodney also said that Diddy made him watch explicit videos of producer Stevie J getting intimate with another man. This was another example of how Diddy's behavior reportedly crossed boundaries and left Rodney feeling uneasy and violated. To make matters even worse, Rodney claimed that he might have been and S8 at one of these infamous parties. While we can't say for certain if everything he described actually happened, there's a strong pattern emerging from similar claims that have been made by other people, especially women who filed lawsuits against Diddy with comparable accusations of manipulatio and exploitation. It's hard to ignore how these stories align, and it makes the situation seem suspicious AD. If nothing else, it raises serious questions about Diddy's past actions and the type of environment he was allegedly creating behind closed doors. That's not all, because Lil Rod also claimed that Diddy allegedly tried to pimp him out to his friends, including allegedly Cuba Gooding Jr. According to TMZ, Jones claims Diddy introduced him to Cuba Gooding Jr. on Diddy's yacht, and Cuba allegedly began touching, groping, and fondling Mr. Jones's legs, his upper inner thighs near his groin, the small of his back near his and his shoulders. Again, that's not all, because Diddy seems to have a long history of inappropriate behavior toward people who work with him, because he allegedly did the same thing to Farnsworth Bentley, who was his assistant in the early 2000s. Farnsworth Bentley first caught everyone's eye back in the early 2000s when he started working for Diddy as his assistant, and honey, let me tell you, the girls were absolutely losing it over him. Chilly, that man was foine with his sharp jawline and that effortless swagger. On top of that, he had impeccable style, always rocking a fresh look that made him even more irresistible. It's safe to say he had the girls swooning. But what most people didn't realize at the time was that Diddy didn't just hire him to grab coffee or run errands. Farnsworth was brought in as a wardrobe stylist and assistant because Diddy was in major need of a rebrand. At that point, Diddy had just been acquitted of charges following that infamous nightclub incident involving his then-girlfriend, Jennifer Lopez, and his artist, Shine. It was a messy situation that had everyone talking, and Diddy's image definitely needed some revamping. Enter Farnsworth, who was the perfect guy to help Diddy polish up his look and get him back on track, all while keeping that cool, suave vibe that became a signature part of his style. But out of nowhere, Farnsworth just dipped out of the industry, moved to Atlanta, got married, and started living this quiet life far away from the Hollywood spotlight. It was a complete 180, and honestly, the math wasn't mathing for anyone. People were left scratching their heads, trying to figure out what had happened. One minute, he was everywhere, making waves with his style and his close association with Diddy, and the next, he was totally off the radar. There were rumors, of course, but nothing solid to explain his sudden departure from the glitz and glam of the entertainment world. Fans were wondering if it was burnout, a personal choice, or maybe something deeper going on behind the scenes. According to Jaguar, the real reason Farnsworth left was that Diddy allegedly SA'd him, leaving Hemi traumatized. Jaguar also claimed that Fonz's marriage was his way of trying to heal from the trauma of being forced into being Diddy's slave because he had to do the freakoffs, allegedly. Given this history, fans are starting to believe Phil's claims more and more, because they align with the patterns we've already seen in the past. It seems like Diddy's behavior toward those around him has been far from respectful, and Phil's allegations just seem to fit into this ongoing narrative of manipulation. Fans are connecting the dots, and it's becoming harder to ignore the disturbing patterns that have been emerging over the years. Well, to nobody's surprise, Diddy's lawyers immediately jumped in to defend him and deny the allegations. They said, no matter how many lawsuits are filed, it won't change the fact that Mr. Combs has never assaulted or anyone, man or woman, adult or minor. We live in a world where anyone can file a lawsuit for any reason. Fortunately, a fair and impartial judicial process exists to find the truth, and Mr. Combs is confident he will prevail in court. Phil has also been reported to be working with the feds and cooperating with them, helping them build their case against Diddy. And at this point, it's clear that Diddy's lawyers have their work cut out for them, cause chilly, the trial is going to be a long and hard one because the feds are not here to play. The feds have a conviction rate of over 90%, meaning that Diddy is more likely than not cooked. So what do y'all think? Do you buy Phil's accusations about Diddy? Or do you feel like he's just chasing a quick payday? Drop your opinions in the comments and then check out this next video.